it's on. All right, we're going to get this meeting started. Somebody make a motion to approve all the items on the consent calendar?
Do you have to do attendance first?
Oh,
Sorry,
I'm reading my cheat sheet and it doesn't say that.
that's my bad.
Attendance, please.
Zamora. Guyer. Here. Harmon.
Here.
Boutros.
Here.
Larson. Vance.
Here.
Whitbeck.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve all the items on the consent calendar?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Ask the commission if you guys can hold your questions on the application until the applicant has had a chance to present and/or limit their questions of staff following their presentation to those they don't think the applicant will be able to answer in their own presentation. There's the opening statement. A quasi-judicial hearing involves the consideration of a land use request such as an annexation, a rezone, classification, or approval of a subdivision preliminary plat. The public hearing procedure as required by the Idaho Code are as follows. Oral and written testimony will be accepted from those who have signed in to speak prior to the hearing being declared open. When providing testimony, please come to the podium, state your name, address, which will be included in the record. Staff will first present a report regarding the application being considered. Public testimony. The applicant or applicant's representative will present a summary of requests, 10 minutes. Testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by those in a neutral position, and finally those in an opposition to the request. Note, all public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes or less. In the interest of time, please refrain from repeating topics that have already been presented. The applicant will be offered the opportunity to provide rebuttal testimony. After the rebuttal testimony is given, the public testimony portion of the public hearing will be closed and a new oral or written testimony will be allowed. Looks like there's no old business, so we'll get on to the new business. Case number SUB 24-000012. Staff is requesting this item to be continued to the December 10th hearing date. Do I have a motion to move this date to December 10th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we need to take roll on that? No. All right. So we'll get on to our next item, case number CPM 25-000001 and ZOA 25-000002. A request by the City of Caldwell for an amendment to the Comprehensive Plan Appendices, Appendix H, to update the Capital Improvement Plan Impact Fee Study and Development Impact Fees for Police and Fire, to include approval of the associated resolution and zoning ordinance text amendment to Chapter 10, Article 3. Staff?
Good evening, Commissioners. Morgan Besod, Planning and Zoning. The application in front of you this evening is a City of Caldwell request to update the comprehensive plan for the adoption of an updated traffic impact fee study, capital improvements plan, and development impact fees for police and fire, as well as an ordinance text amendment to amend Chapter 10, Article 3 of the City Code, to reference the new study prepared by Tischler Weiss, who will present after me. Idaho Code requires that cities have a comprehensive plan, and if the city is imposing development impact fees, that they must prepare a capital improvement plan, and such plan must be adopted and included as an element of the comprehensive plan. Idaho Code further mandates that capital improvement plans be updated once every 5 years, and since the last update to the police and fire impact fees was in 2020, the city was statutorily required to update the plan, which requires them to apply for a comprehensive plan amendment to include as part of the comp plan. So we have our impact fees in the current plan as one of the appendices, so this would be switching it out for the new impact fee plan. With that, an ordinance text amendment is required to update the reference in City Code to the new report, which will be presented to you after this. So components of the plan were reviewed for compliance with Idaho Code. Tischler Bice met with the city's Impact Fee Advisory Committee as is required by Idaho Code, and they made a recommendation for approval. The letter's in your packet. The capital improvement plan and development impact fees were analyzed for conformance with the city's goals and policies of the comp plan, and the proposed text amendment was reviewed for conformance with city code and as well as Idaho Code, and they were all found to be in conformance, which is detailed in your staff report. Notice was provided to all political subdivisions providing services within the planning jurisdiction, including schools. ITD and Nampa Highway District 1 responded with no comments or concerns. The letter of recommendation for approval, which was received from the Caldwell Impact Fee Advisory Committee, is in your packet in this section under agency comments. And due to this being a legislative item, no public mailing notifications were required, and legal ads for the public hearing were published, but no public comments have been received to date. As I mentioned, there is a staff analysis in the staff report showing that the impact fees were in compliance with, and the ordinance were in compliance with the city code for both the text amendments and the comp plan amendments. There was only one condition of approval outlined in your staff report. It's seen on the screen. As recommended by the Caldwell Impact Fee Advisory Committee, development impact fees for police and fire shall be reviewed annually to ensure that they remain fair, equitable, and aligned with both the city's capital improvement needs and the community's capacity to sustain responsible growth. And so, staff's summary is that we recommend that if the commission recommends for approval, that it's subject to that condition as was specified in your staff report. And I would hand it over to our consultant to present the plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Morgan. I'm Colin McElweeney with Tischler Bice, the consultant that the city hired to update their impact fees in CIP. Wanted to, I guess, introduce myself, the firm, but also go through some impact fee fundamentals, kind of what they are, what they aren't, since you are sort of updating this in the comp plan. And then actually going through some of the fee analysis to sort of give you an idea of kind of how we got those maximum supportable fee amounts, and then open up for any questions that the board commission might have. Here's a sort of laundry list of all of our clients throughout Idaho, including the city of Caldwell. We did their study 5 years ago. I think it's important to show sort of we understand, you know, the interworking of Idaho, but also the sort of prevalence of impact fees throughout the state and how important it is. You know, the cities continue to get restrictions on property tax, how much they can grow those budgets, and as the communities continue to grow, there's these infrastructure costs associated with growth, and impact fees are one way to sort of mitigate those costs. So you're seeing this, you know, through the Panhandle, Bonner County, Kootenai County, really all throughout the Treasure Valley, and then as you go east through Twin and Idaho Falls, you're going to see impact fees as well. So impact fees, you know, just high level here, these are one-time payments that new growth pays to offset their new demand on infrastructure. In this case, when we're thinking infrastructure tonight, it's fire stations, fire engines or fire apparatuses is the term there, and then police station, sort of brick and mortar police stations and sort of heavier vehicles that have a 10-year useful life or longer. So it's typically when the building permit is issued, you pay the impact fee that's collected and then put into impact fee funds to then be used for those applicable infrastructure expansion projects to accommodate that growth. We prepare a nexus study, so I don't know how many pages it is, 80-some pages, which hits on three things: need, benefit, and proportionality. You want to ensure that there's a need for impact fees, so essentially you have this capital improvement plan, this CIP, that lists out future infrastructure expansions that are growth related, that we're saying, hey, we're growing at a good clip, we need to expand our fire stations, add new fire stations, add new engines associated with those fire stations, and so there's a need to collect impact fees and fund it through those revenue arrangements. The impact fee programs have to be benefit the fee payer. So you'll see in state code that it says within 8 years, these impact fee dollars have to be spent. It does say 11 years in extraordinary circumstances, but really, I think on our end, we're sort of somewhat vetting these CIPs as well, because we don't want to see a city just sort of collecting impact fees and not really having any use for them, no plans to use those dollars. Really shouldn't just be kind of stockpiling the cash without expending it in an appropriate manner that you're providing that benefit to the people that pay for it. You also may see service areas in these impact fee studies. We haven't done it for the city of Caldwell, but if you're sort of thinking through other impact fees throughout at least the Treasure Valley, actually, I know ACHD, Ada County Highway District, is looking at 2 service areas for their impact fee program, because there's specific CIPs in the western part of the Ada County and specific projects in the eastern part of Ada County, and so they're sort of separating that, or at least proposing that, just to ensure that there's a nexus between dollars being collected and where they're what infrastructure projects they're funding. In this case, with a city, especially in police services and fire services, we're saying any police station expansion project is providing benefit to all residents. All fire station expansion is providing and expanding fire service to all residents, and so everyone's sort of benefiting from it, and so we're using one service area approach there. And then lastly, the fee has to be proportionate, so we're really only thinking about that growth-related capital cost, but then also you're going to see a handful of land uses, development types in the final fee schedule here, because single family has a different demand than multifamily, which is different than retail and office and industrial, and you want to make sure that that fee is proportionate to that demand. Importantly, we're really only thinking new capital, or if you've actually oversized a facility and issued debt, you can use future impact fees to service the growth-related portion of that debt. And although there might be operational impacts by growth, we can't use impact fees to hire new firefighters, to hire new police officers, or just sort of following state code there. Also, if there's maintenance related costs or repairs, like leaky roof, that's also not an impact fee eligible cost, because it wasn't the new homes that came in that caused that leaky roof, right? That's a cost generally on the general fund. But I got park examples. Parks generally tend to be the easiest ones to sort of understand eligibility. So if you have a net new playground, right, we just sort of buy new land, put playground equipment on it, that would be 100% growth related. Replacing that rusty slide would not be impact fee eligible. And then you're going to see some examples where portions of projects would be eligible for impact fee funding. In this case, if you're replacing something that exists there today, but expanding the capacity, the use of that facility, that expanded capacity could be impact fee eligible. So give an example here. So we're going 400 square feet playground to 1,000, 60% there could be impact fee funded. More sort of specifics in Idaho here, kept in interest-bearing accounts, dollars have to be spent. It says, again, 8 years, but we do have 11 years as extraordinary circumstances. We need to have an impact fee advisory committee, so they do a couple of things. They meet annually to review these CIPs, also the cash flow in, but the expenditures of those, to make sure that there's oversight on the dollars being used. But they also meet, I think we met 3 or 4 times to review the assumptions and capital improvement plans in these reports, to get the vetting on that. They have boots on the ground to understand, costs, but also a few of them have to be within the development community, and so they also provide input on, hey, if you're proposing this fee, this might be an overburden on growth. This might actually sort of slow growth down, and we sort of gather those inputs and review through that committee there. Have to update these every 5 years, as was mentioned. And importantly, the infrastructure that we're talking about has to have a 10-year useful life or longer. And you're seeing there's sort of specific categories. So utilities, roads, parks, law enforcement, fire, and EMS, following state code there. Sort of went into the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee already, but the DFAC, sort of a mixture of residents and sort of reviewing these assumptions, meeting annually to provide oversight of these funds and the program. As mentioned, they recommended 100% of the maximum that you'll see at the end here. But also another big discussion we had is potentially assessing residential impact fees based on the square footage of the home. And it's actually something that's becoming more and more common because you'll see, a single-family fee, and so for all single-family homes, no matter the size, they'll be all assessed the same fee. But especially in the current market, we're seeing smaller single-family homes being built, so they're paying the same fee as a 4,000 square foot home. And I know Boise, Meridian do their impact fees by square footage. It's becoming more. It's been around for quite some time, especially in resort communities where there's this sort of bifurcation of like luxury homes that are 8,000 square feet, and you're more sort of general, population down here. And so that's been around for, I guess, probably 15 years at least. I know up in Sandpoint, we've been doing it for at least 3 updates now up there by the square footage. The reason why we can't do it just yet is that the administrative software that's used to actually assess the fees cannot handle that approach just yet. So we have to update the park impact fees next year, and I think the city is actually going through a possible update of that software. So hopefully at that time, we can incorporate the fee schedule by square footage for all categories, not just parks. I guess any questions when we're thinking about like impact fees in general before I go into sort of the study? No? Okay. Just working my way through here. So the study updates, so when we do these comprehensive updates, we're really sort of looking at every single element of these calculations. So things to consider are inflation over the last 5 years. Fire trucks have now really doubled in cost. What was maybe $500,000 for an engine is now over $1 million. We think about levels of service, CIPs to make sure that we're collecting for what's needed, but also we're not over collecting. Sometimes you might see a reduction in an impact fee to make sure that we're appropriately collecting a reduced CIP. So making sure that all melds together. Right now, the City of Caldwell is charging a uniform impact fee for all residential development, so even every single family home, every multifamily home is paying one fee, and same on the commercial side, listed here as non-residential fee. All commercial development is paying the same, and so you'll see that the proposed maximums here break it out by single family, multifamily, and then you're going to have retail, office, industrial, and a handful of industrials there, just to make sure that the fee's a bit more proportionate, a bit more precise, let's say. But currently collecting about $200 there for police impact fees every home, $1,000 per home for fire. So right now we're collecting about $1,200, $1,300 per home for fire, parks and fire. Importantly, the city does collect for parks, which we're not addressing tonight. And there's, I think, discussions of a road impact fee from the highway district. Going into the fire analysis, same approach was taken for police, but it's called incremental expansion. And so essentially we've quantified that current level of service and brought it into dollars when we're looking at the current costs associated with building a new fire station and purchasing a new fire engine. So essentially that final dollar amount represents the cost to serve every new resident that comes into town. So they will pay that impact fee to sort of contain or sort of stabilize the current level of service, gather dollars, through that revenue source, and then build or sort of complete our CIP as we collect those dollars to continue today's level of service into the future. This is based on the fees assessed on residential and non-residential demand. We examined call for service data for parks and fire, police and fire, to understand, what call volumes coming from residential development, what call volumes coming from non-residential development to find that proportionality. Collecting for fire facilities or station expansion. That's both, could be expansion of an existing station or building a brand new station. Apparatus are those fire engines and other fire response units. Equipment is included in here. Equipment that has a 10-year useful life has been sort of interpreted as being a public facility to continue providing fire service. Also communications equipment is included in here. Smaller amounts, but does help alleviate as much burden as possible that growth has on our general fund. And also actually the impact fee studies themselves can be paid through the impact fee revenues. Here's an example of that level of service analysis for fire stations. A little wrinkle here is actually we're looking at a future level of service, a 2028 level of service, because the city's actually secured bond financing to build or expand Station 1 and build Station 4. And so essentially we're saying after those construction projects in 2028, we're going to have our sort of future level of service, this sort of invested level of service that we can collect that impact fee on. At that point, we'll have 44,000 square feet of station space between those four stations. And then you're seeing a column there that's a percent of responses, and that's percent of call responses going to the city of Caldwell. Right now, the city also has a contract for service to the rural fire district, and so we actually wanted to essentially reduce the facility inventory here to account for that external demand, and that's about 10% of those calls are going to non-City of Caldwell development. So we wanted to make sure that we're not sort of over-calculating that demand and attributing it all to City of Caldwell development. So instead of the 44,000 square feet, we're looking at 39,000 square feet. Just kind of following through that big figure there. Through call data, we found that 88% of those calls were to residential locations, 12 to non-residential locations, and so that's where we sort of find that proportionate split there. Compare those square footages to that future population in non-residential vehicle trips to get that current facility, or I guess that future facility level service of 408 square feet per 1,000 people. And then as we sort of go further down in that figure, we bring this into dollars, looking at the future anticipated construction costs of fire station space in Caldwell, and that's about $800 per square foot. So we multiply that level of service by the cost of construction to get capital cost per person of $327. Now this is the CIP that the fire department put together. So you're going to see Station 1 and 4 kind of on the top there. Both being funded with the bond, but also actually existing impact fee funds. So no future impact fees moving forward into the future are going to be spent on Station 1 and 4, and we'll be focusing on 5 and 6 in those out years there. Then going down the plan here with their apparatuses, we have a handful of engines and other units that we have to purchase to sort of outfit those new stations, and then smaller equipments, comms equipment. Those are essentially devices at intersections, so the fire engines can sort of switch the lights at the intersections to help them respond quicker. Total plan there over 10 years is $51.4 million. What's attributed to growth is $28 million, so we're sort of working at the bottom line there. And then impact fee revenue over the next 10 years is about $16.7 million. We're going to use what's in the coffers right now to the tune of $3.3 million. And so there's other funding needed, about $31 million to complete this. Most of that being the bond. And there's other elements here that aren't growth related too. So we're sort of looking at a larger plan, but pretty substantial, yeah. Final fees here. So instead of sort of working through each one of the slides or sort of steps in the calculation, I sort of bring in the sum here. So we do that level of service analysis for stations, apparatus, equipment, comms equipment, and actually the cost of the study. So you have a gross total, and then there are other revenue sources that are being used to complete that CIP, the gross share of that CIP. And we want to ensure that we're not double collecting on future homes. And so that essentially that homeowner will end up paying the fee when they purchase the home, but they'll also be paying property tax going towards that bond that was used to expand Station 1 and 4. And so we actually reduced the impact fee tune of $81 there per person to account for those future bond payments, so we're not double collecting on those new homes. Same thing is done actually for a lease to own agreement that the city has for 3 apparatuses. So smaller there, but again, wanting to make sure that if we're charging to expand our fleet, that we're reducing that to account for other revenues that are coming from those homes. So that totals there $417 per person, or $70 per non-residential vehicle trip. And then on that bottom figure there, you're seeing really that proportionality of those different land use types. So a single-family home in Caldwell has about 3 people. So in the green there, that maximum supportable fee amount is calculated by multiplying the $417 by the 3 people per person. And that's a $200 increase from that sort of base uniform current fee. On the multifamily side, that's about $800 per unit. That's per unit, so you build a 20-unit apartment building, you pay 20x that amount. And then on the commercial side down below, that's listed by sort of their greatest demand all the way down to sort of lowest demand per 1,000 square feet. So we're seeing actually decreases for all developments except for retail. Retail is going up by $460 per 1,000 square feet. And that's actually pretty common to see because you have that uniform fee right now for all commercial development. So that's basically the average of all development. And then when we break that out, some are going to be decreasing, some are going to be increasing. In this case, retail increasing. Industrial, we're going to see pretty good decreases there. Moving along to police, same methodology was taken. We're looking at call data, assessing that based on residential, non-residential demand. Police facilities, so sort of brick and mortar. Police station space, heavy vehicles. I made sure that we sort of listed as heavy vehicles because patrol vehicles in Caldwell are being turned over less than 10 years. And so we can't use impact fees to buy new patrol vehicles, but there are heavier vehicles that have a longer life than 10 years that we can use impact fees for. So smaller equipment, more like sort of body armor, radios, and weaponry have a 10-year useful life or longer, and also the share of the study. So very similar, kind of redundant slide here, but this is this sort of station space that's in the ground today, 32,000 square feet, finding that proportionate split, comparing that to today's population to get 300 square feet per 1,000 people. Looking at the CIP cost, they anticipate about $650 per square foot to expand. Actually, in this case, you'll see a precinct, a second precinct or second location, and that's based on a recent construction over there in Meridian. Here's the police CIP. So we have a handful of sort of smaller facility needs, training facility, crime specialists in training range there, and then a large precinct 10 years out, about 14,000 square feet. In current dollars, that's $9.5 million. All of that could be growth related, and all of that actually will be recovered through impact fees over that 10-year frame. A little bit of couple of vehicles there, new animal control vehicle and command vehicle, some equipment. So the total plan about $11.5 million, most of that being growth related, and $10 million coming from future impact fees. We have about $841,000 in the bank today for police impact fee funds, and that's going to the sort of the first couple projects on the list, and we'll need other revenues of about $427,000 to fully fund that plan. Here's the sort of very similar figure, but for the police maximum supportable fee amounts. In this case, there's no other revenues specifically going to those capital projects, so there's no reductions. $211 per person multiplied by the number of people per home gets us $641 per single family home. In this case, we're seeing increases both on multifamily and single family, and also actually increases for nearly all non-residential development types there. Self-storage is the only one there that sees a slight decrease from what's being collected today. Retail seeing a pretty substantial increase. Right now we got $90 per 1,000 square feet. This would go up to $1,600 per 1,000 square feet. Here's summary table, police and fire. Again, keep in mind there's parks and potentially roads, but I just wanted to sort of hone in on what we're talking about tonight. Total there, maximum $1,900 for a single family home, $1,200 per multifamily unit, getting increases for retail, office, and industrial, and then decreases for institutional, which is healthcare and education, and then those sort of smaller or lesser impactful industrial types. Lastly, here's a comparison of impact fees, police and fire impact fees being collected throughout the Treasure Valley. So we're kind of looking at, okay, if you build a single-family home in Boise, Eagle, Star, Cuna, Napa, Caldwell, Middleton, and Meridian, what your police and fire impact fees would look like. Some of that being collected by actually fire districts. Let's say, like, you know, the Eagle City doesn't have a fire department. There's an Eagle Fire District there. So right now, actually, the parks, or sorry, police, I keep saying parks, but the police and fire impact fees right now in Caldwell are actually below at the bottom of this list. In the 1900, just kind of puts us sort of right in the middle there. I put the dates also, so those were the dates, those studies were last updated, just to give you a sense of, well, you know, if we didn't account for inflation, you know, the city of Eagle will be updating their fees soon enough here, and that probably will be increasing, just accounting for inflation. Just some considerations too. I think this might be my last slide. The advisory committee recommended 100% of those maximums. City council can adopt lower, right? So that's a maximum the study supports. We can go below that. Any comments, inputs from P&Z tonight will also be passed along to city council. These CIPs, you know, are incorporated in the comp plans, and we do have a public hearing, or the city has to have a public hearing for the city council adoption of these new ordinances. So that was it that I had.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions by commissioners?
Yeah, so staff has recommended a condition of approval for an annual review. How much of this extensive analysis would have to be repeated to support such an annual review?
That's a great question, Commissioner. Typically, and this is already being done in other cities, like I know Nampa's doing this, is that these committees will meet, your committee will meet to review basically the cash flows in, and the cost, also the cost estimates of like the fire engines and those basically those costs in the CIP. Because if we go through another like high inflationary period and we're not capturing enough to build that fire station, you know, to make sure that you're capturing those revenues, you would want to update the study, which would mean kind of going through the similar process. You know, you would have to update the CIPs to reflect those cost increases, to go to ordinance, you know, fee schedule. On the flip side too, if the city's overestimated those construction costs, then and the advisory committee is seeing that, then the recommendation might be to lower those capital improvement plans, the costs associated with them, and then the fee, you know, would follow that. Yeah. So it could be a little, or it could be a lot. Yeah.
Anything else? Nope. Debbie?
No, I have no other questions. Thank
I
you
just-
for a good explanation, though.
It was a good explanation, thank you.
Yeah.
I just got one quick question. So we fund, and I think I know this answer, but, so we fund the fire departments and the police stations, the new stations of the new police station. Do we look into knowing how we're gonna staff those since, you know, I mean, I'm gonna go to Star. Star's got a fire station that's sitting there that they built, and I get it, they had to use that money, right? Because it was gonna run out. But how do we know that that's gonna get staffed properly
That's
to?
a challenge.
That's a great question, and a question that we made sure to ask, especially the police chief, because he's talking about a new precinct, right? And so that's not necessarily just patrol officers, that's admin and keeping the lights on and maintaining that building. And to your point too, right, we can get you the dollars to get you the brick and mortar, right? But there's obligations on the ongoing budget associated with these capital plans. And, you know, so the impact fees are sort of part of that equation, but the larger part typically is the operating side. And this would be, there's a commitment in these adoptions that you build those infrastructure, but you also operate and maintain that infrastructure and provide that benefit. So we have vetted that question with the police chief and fire chief. They understand the sort of intricacies and kind of the commitments that are being made through this, yeah.
Mr. Chair, if we could maybe have the finance director maybe address that, because that's a budgetary issue, and I know that there's safer grants and whatnot with that, but Raylan, would you mind just addressing that, what you foresee in the upcoming budget period?
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Raylan North. I looked at what was recommended, as well as I was asked that same question of how we're going to finance police and fire officers. And one of the things within the budget process is we look at, the big talk is Station 4 right now. How are we going to fund those officers, especially when the station's coming in the next 2 years? And so that is already built into where my next revenue projections, building that in so that I am staffing those. I'm in conversations with both chiefs to make sure those are the priorities. City Council has given me those as the priorities, and so that's the highest step. Ultimately, that decision always comes down to City Council, but when building the budget, that's kind of the place that I start. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Raylene.
Yep.
Thank you. I think there's no more questions. I think we're good.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm
Yeah.
prepared to propose a motion if we'd like.
Okay.
Actually, I'd like a little bit of discussion.
All right.
Yeah, so we got to go. There's no public testimony, so we're going to move on to, we don't need the applicant to rebut. Additional questions by staff, by each commissioner? No more questions? Okay. I need a motion to close public testimony.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we can go into deliberation.
Yeah. So I'm a little concerned about the open-ended nature of the condition of approval. Currently, the Impact Advisory Committee does meet once a year. They have the authority, because they've been chartered by the City Council, to ask for an additional analysis if they see fit to do that, rather than have an open-ended commitment to redo some part, small part, large part, it was unknown, of an extensive analysis. I'd rather leave that up to the Impact Advisory Committee rather than the Planning and Zoning Commission incorporating that as a condition of approval now.
Yeah, anybody?
Could we ask staff, possibly Ray
Maybe
Lynn, you
Ray
could again, can maybe address what you consider maybe a good recommendation on that?
So if you guys don't know, I am the staff person in charge of the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. I'm not on it, but I do assist them. I give them the annual report. And just with any fees, we do an annual review. And so I do look at the data, and I do look at inflation based off of the engineering news report that comes out, and make a recommendation. However, the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, I take it to them, and whether they want to recommend that go to City Council or not every year, that is where I give them the choice. But I do make that recommendation to them every year when reviewing the fees, of whether inflationary goes up or not, so.
So it sounds like we don't actually need the condition of approval.
No.
That's the way I understand that as well. Basically, it's a budgetary issue that's going to be
Yeah.
determined by City Council.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? From anybody? Okay, I'll look for a motion.
All right. Based upon the testimony and evidence in the record for this matter, and upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth therein, I do hereby determine and move to recommend the request for CPM 25-1 and ZOA 25-2 comprehensive plan update and zoning ordinance text to be approved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay. Roll call?
Guyer,
Yes.
Boutros,
Yes.
Harmon,
Yes.
Vance.
Yes.
Okay. Now do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.